You're welcome back to the program. It's Good Afternoon, Ghana. I earlier on told you what we are about this afternoon, and that has to do with a suit leveled against the former President John Dramani Mahama, and we want to see how far that will go. And let's see how the NDC will also handle this issue for that matter. So I already have in the studio with me Paragraph Wachidanka, who is spokesperson for Governance and Security. Paragraph, you're welcome. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Annie, and it's good to be here.
Right, good to have you as well. And also Theophilus Donko is a private legal practitioner. He's also with me. Theo, you're welcome. Good afternoon. I like your red tie. Amazing. It's very captivating. But Abraham, okay, I'm told your mics are, okay, your mic is on. Paragraph mic is on, so if you can check for him. But Theophilus, yours is off. Yes, thank you. It's on now. So can we try again? You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I hope he's fine. We have Abraham Amaleba, who is also Director of Legal Affairs for the NDC, also via Zoom. Abraham, if you can hear me, thank you for your time. Good afternoon. Welcome to Good Afternoon, Ghana.
Good afternoon to you, and thanks for having me.
All right, grateful to have you as well. Let me start with you, since you are the one, at the receiving end. Since this suit came in yesterday, what has the party done so far?
The former president has not been served with any writs, and we cannot rely on social media as being authentic. So as we speak, until the former president is served, the party is focused on a send-off for now.
So we get the impression that you have still not been served.
That is so. Service is personal, and until you serve the person whose name is on the writs, that person cannot be relying on social media, documents on social media as service. No.
Service is personal. Does it mean that the likelihood that there are persons around the one that's been sued who have copies of the suit, but he in person has not received it, or he has not been served? Is that the impression I get too?
You cannot serve anybody apart from the person who is suited, unless he tells you that he authorizes another person to take a suit on his behalf. So what I'm saying is loud and clear. The former president has not been served. It's not about those around him. Nobody has served the former president.
Very interesting. Let me take your opening comments on what he's just said. I'll start off with Paragraph. Paragraph, when he said that, I saw that you opened your arms like you were shocked.
Yes, to be honest, Annie, a very good afternoon to you, and very good afternoon to your viewing public. You're aware that this suit is a private citizen suit, and so government has no position on it. I'm just here to be able to share a bit more opinions, and also as we prepare for our send-off, I think that that's critical. There's every opportunity on the media space to ensure that the New Patriotic Party wins their send-off. Is important for us as a political party. I threw my hand in arms because I'm just beginning to wonder, then why is the discussion?
Exactly.
If the former president has not been served, you need to go through the proper processes to be able to serve the former president. If at all the subject of your matter is of relevance to the Ghanaian people, but I think that the Ghanaian people have come of age of our democracy. The Ghanaian people are very clear in their mind when it comes to electioneering processes. The NDC have elected their flag bearer to lead the 2024 general election. We as well as a political party are just teaming up very well to do our super delegates congress in August to ensure that the number of persons that are filed for nominations to be flag bearer. If the number is more than 5, we'll have a super delegate congress, reduce it to 5. Then in November, we'll have our main congress. People have already filed their forms and submitted their forms. The sitting vice president is going to submit his form on Friday at 11 o'clock at the party office. And so I think that if he hasn't filed yet and he wants to gather people around the table, he should do what is right.
It's shocking to me as well. Theophilus, what do you think?
The processes are that once a writ is filed, commencing any action, you cannot serve any other person apart from the person or persons named in the writ. And it should be personal. So if I sue you, I cannot serve you through anybody until I serve you and you give it to a lawyer, and the lawyer file processes at the court. Then after that, the lawyer will be served. So as we speak now, if the former president had not been served, then nothing can go on. And the NDC, they are right in saying that they will not respond to social media or traditional media. But what I want to say is that the rate is both in social media and traditional media.
Right.
But once we know that the stamp on it is that of the Supreme Court registry or the registrar's stamp, then we assume that it is authentic and it is genuine. But until the former president is served personally, there cannot be any reaction from his camp. And I also want to say that it is not only John Mahama who has been sued in this matter, but it includes former President John Ajekum Kufuor, the Speaker, the Parliament has been sued, and then the Attorney General as well. So these are my reopening comments.
What's his name? Lawyer Malaba, are you still there?
I'm here.
May I know if, when you saw it circulating on social media, was it a point of concern for former President Mahama? Can you tell us anything? Because I'm here wondering, okay, it has circulated so far, you know, on social media, traditional media has highlighted it, until now he has not been served. That's shocking. Did we get any response from his office in terms of how he just personally responded to what he's seen on social media?
I don't work directly in his office. I work at the party headquarters. But clearly, checks conducted at his office indicates that he has not been served. As to whether he is worried or he's not worried, I can tell you that this whole exercise of wanting to have the Supreme Court stop him from contesting was brewing far back as 2020. Even though he contested in that election. So this will not come to me as a surprise. However, it is our view as lawyers for the party that this writ is one that has no legs to stand, and that there is absolutely nothing, and I must say nothing, that stops the former president from contesting. The Constitution is very clear. And there's no amount of legal gymnastics or legal somersault or legal semantics that can stop the former president from contesting. So these are my remarks on the suit.
How about, you know, even though you conclude that it has no legs to stand on, their legal gymnastics, you know, sometimes when things or lies are spread during election periods, it gets to a point where the vulnerable tend to feed on these lies. I'm just wondering if the NDC doesn't think that even if they don't suffer anything from it, it can affect you somehow in other rural areas who might not necessarily understand the issues.
It is the responsibility of the party to dispel all those notions. The party has a machinery, has a communication wing, and it is a powerful communication wing that will dispel all those notions. But from the legal standpoint, we as lawyers, having evaluated the suit, have come to the conclusion that it is baseless and cannot stand the test of time. In fact, if this were in the US, where cases are sieved before they end up on the judge's table in the Supreme Court, this would have been one of the cases that the Supreme Court would throw away. There are thousands and thousands of cases that are filed in the US Supreme Court. But in a year, just a few would have their day in court. But we are not in the US, so anybody gets up, files anything at the Supreme Court. This, for me, is a ridiculous and a weird suit that is coming from somebody who says he's a lawyer.
So what's contained, in this ridiculous and weird suit? Amalba, hold on there. Let me just go through some of the reliefs that they sought. And it says that first one, I think you have some scrolling on your screen. It says that the declaration that on the true and proper interpretation of Article 66, Clause 1 of the 1992 Constitution, the number of years of the president term in Ghana is 4 years. A declaration that on a true and proper interpretation of the 66 Clause 1 and Clause 2 of the 1992 Constitution, a person seeking a second presidential term must be a sitting president. Third one says that the declaration that on the true proper interpretation of this Article 68, Clause 2 of the 1992 Constitution, a former president of Ghana is a ward of Parliament. And then 4, a declaration of, this one I'm struggling to read. A declaration that on a true and proper interpretation of 68 Clause 2 of the 1992 Constitution, a former president of Ghana requires parliamentary approval before he can occupy any other office other than an office of the state. A declaration, that's the fifth one, a declaration that on the true and proper interpretation of 68 Clause 2 of the 1992 Constitution, a former president of Ghana requires parliamentary approval before he can occupy any other office that provides emolument. 6, a declaration on the true and proper interpretation of 68 Clause 3 of the 1992 Constitution that the office of the president is an office that provides emolument. And then a declaration that on a true and proper interpretation of the Article 68, Clause 4, Clause 5, Clause 6, 7, 8, and 9, a former president of Ghana remains in the employ of the state. And a declaration, this is the 8th one, the declaration on the true and proper construction of Article 62 of the 1992 Constitution, a former president of Ghana is not qualified, eligible to seek election as president of Ghana. An order directed at the 4th defendant to invoke and operationalized Article 68, Clause 2 of the 1992 Constitution. An order directed at 2nd and 3rd defendant to compel them to make available to Parliament all engagement not to do with matters of the state of Ghana. 11, an order directed at 3rd defendant to fully disclose to Parliament the terms of his engagement at as a flag bearer of a political party. And 12, an order directed at 3rd defendant to seek parliamentary approval for his engagement as flag bearer of the political party, or in the alternative, an order directed at 3rd defendant to desist from his presidential ambitions. 13 is any order any other order or orders that the Honorable Court may deem fit to grant. So the capacity in which the plaintiff is bringing the action is as follows: the citizen of Ghana and all that as part of the suit. The details, I'm not sure if you have gone through, right. How does it come to you? Because as Amaliba is saying, as lawyers, they have gone through the suits and they've come to a conclusion that it has no legs to stand on. And if till now it has not been served on those who have been sued, I'm not sure if there's any future for this suit.
There's a future for this suit if the plaintiff is minded to pursue the suit.
The service, okay.
But what is important is that we should know what the Supreme Court does in such instances. When you go to the Supreme Court directly by a writ, it means that you are asking the Supreme Court to interpret and enforce certain provisions of the Constitution, which is a serious business. This is this is the only opportunity where a citizen can file a writ at the Supreme Court directly. So it's a serious business. And having read through the what he's seeking to do, for instance, if you look at the first, it says that the term of office of the president shall be 4 years. For Supreme Court to interpret and enforce the Constitution, the interpretation side, it means that there should be real ambiguity or the provisions are not clear.
Of that,
that is when the Supreme Court will be engaged in the issue of what? Interpretation.
But let me ask about this, the wording proper interpretation.
So what is
it a law language as if you are suing?
What is
a legal language?
What is just saying is that interpreting the said Article 61 or 61(2), the Supreme Court in properly interpreting it should come to the conclusion he is seeking. So that is a legal term. But what he's asking is that if you read, for instance, the first relief, he's saying that if you read Article 66, Clause 1, what it means is that the president will serve a term of what? 4 years when he's elected into office, which we have been doing all this while since 1993. So if you are now asking the Supreme Court to do it, that is
a proper interpretation.
That means that what the Supreme Court will be doing, there has not been any ambiguity as the body, for instance, Electoral Commission, when they organize and the time that the president is sworn in. But what I see in this particular writ is that he is arguing that upon the true and proper interpretation of Article 66, 1 and 2, for you to be elected for a second term, you should be a sitting president.
Yeah, that's what he's
That
saying.
is where the issue of misunderstanding, I think, that will come up in this litigation.
Because the Constitution has said that when you are, as in the president, you can ask for a second term.
But he is saying that second term, you should be a sitting president. And I think the NDC is also saying that no, once the Constitution says that it is 2 terms. And if you look at the Constitution, it says that where the vice president serves part of a president who dies or who resigns or who is removed from office, serves more than half of that president's term, then he will have only 1 term. So in the case of John Dramani Mahama, this issue comes in. He serves part of Professor Mills' term, but it was not even up to half, to be more than half. So the issue of 1 term does not arise. But I think that upon a careful and proper reading of the Constitution, I don't think that the framers of the Constitution, if you look at the memorandum that came with the Constitution, you will not come to that conclusion to say that you should be a sitting president before you can run for a second term. What my understanding is that then it means that you are taking the will of the people, the Ghanaian voters. Because if the Ghanaian voter says that, okay, you have done 1 term, you don't want you, but you come again and the Ghanaian voter says that we want you to do a second term. So I think that the NDC has looked at the whole Constitution vis-a-vis the rules of interpretation and look at it and saying that this rate is dead on arrival. In a sense, I will agree with them. But in another sense, I would say that the two of them are putting different interpretation on Article 66, Clause 1 and 2. The plaintiff is saying that you need to be a sitting president before you can run for a second term. But the NDC is saying that no, you don't need to be a sitting president. All the Constitution says is that you are entitled to run for 2 terms, and for each term is for 4 years. And Mahama has run for only 1 term, which is the 4 years that he did from 2012 to 2013 to 2017.
Yeah, but if the Constitution says you're entitled to run for 2 terms, it wasn't specific to say you can only ask for a second term whilst
you are
you're
sitting president. That's where I have issues with his rate.
But it's fair to request for
interpretation.
An interpretation of that nature.
But does it, from the careful reading of the Constitution, does it, the framers contemplate that? Or is that what the framers at the time they were enacting the Constitution, is that what they were looking at? That once you become a president, automatically you are forced to do 2 terms. If you don't do the 2 terms, then you cannot come back. The Supreme Court will look at that. But if you ask me my personal opinion, I do not see that upon the reading of the Constitution. But that is where the issue of interpretation will arise, because he is putting a different interpretation on that constitutional provision. And the NDC is also putting a different interpretation on that Constitution. So at any rate, the Supreme Court will hear him. As to whether they will agree with the plaintiff or not is another matter that we will all wait to unfold. But what I see is that the plaintiff is seeking in all that he can for the former president not to contest. And
so the Article 66 Clause 2, look, let's start from Clause 1 and 2.
Yes.
It says that the person elected, Clause 1 says, the person elected as president shall, subject to Clause 3 of this article, hold office for a term of 4 years, beginning from the date on which he is sworn in as president.
That is so.
And then Clause 2 says, a person shall not be elected to hold office as president of Ghana for more than 2 terms.
So he is saying that
He's done 1 term.
he's done.
Mahama has done 1 term.
Mahama has done 1 term, but he is saying that the interpretation he wants the Supreme Court to put on it is that when you do, by the time you are finishing,
he wants the Supreme Court to
put on Clause 1 and 2 of Article 66 is that once you are doing your first term, before the expiration of your first term, you should be elected 1 month, as the Constitution says, to expiration of your first term. So if you are not elected at the end of your first term, then you cannot run for office again. But what I want you to say is that if you read his whole reliefs, because he has not given us, he has to come with a statement of case,
yes,
which will give us the facts, yes, and the law he's relying on.
Right.
But that one will come later. But if you read the whole of his reliefs, you realize that I would say that there is a mischief in it. For instance, where he says that the president should declare to Parliament his engagement as a presidential candidate for a political party. The Constitution says that the former presidents cannot hold office for profits or emoluments. And we all know that when you are a flag bearer, you don't hold an office of what? Profit, or you don't benefit anything. So that is where I think that I don't know how he's looking at it, but that is where the NDC will read that he's seeking all that he can to make sure that he doesn't contest in this election. But if you ask me, as I've already stated, that the Supreme Court, in their interpretation, have come out with purposive interpretation. That is looking at the purpose for which the Constitution or the particular provision was framed. The framers of the Constitution, when they were making that constitutional provision, what did they have in mind?
Let me get, Pagwe, are you okay now?
Very much.
Are you better? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
I mean, with all that we have said, even though it's not been served, I'm sure Ken Cruncher will try to pursue so that he is served. I'm not sure how easy that will be for him, because when you go to the former president's office, There are all kinds of protocols.
But once you get there and you identify yourself as a court bailiff, they should allow you to serve the former president, because it is only a bailiff that has been assigned with the writ who can serve the former president.
I mean, we were here when Okudzeto Ablakwa, suffered same attack, I would say, when people posed to be bailiffs
That is so.
and came to him, served him and all that, he refused to take it. There was the brouhaha. And then later the court actually said that those who were sent were not bailiffs of
I think that the office of the former president, once you go to a protocol, every bailiff, either we have two kinds of bailiffs, which are private bailiffs and traditional bailiffs. The traditional ones are officers of the judicial service, but the judicial service has outsourced other persons who should serve. So once you get to the former president office, I think that you need to provide your ID card. They will take your name and then your ID card number and verify with the office of the judicial secretary. And once you get to any person or any office within Ghana and you identify yourself as a bailiff, the process, they must allow you to serve. If you interfere with the bailiff, it is contempt of court.
Okay.
So if you look at the Okudzeto Ablakwa case, it came out that the persons who served was not a bailiff. That is what I think one of the reasons why. And then for the fact that he's a member of parliament, you need to go through a certain process. I think these two things that saved him from the contempt. So once the person identifies himself and you obstruct that person, you are in contempt of court when you are brought before court.
Right. Paragraph, what do you make of all that?
Well, I think that this is the very first time that we have had a former president.
I was thinking same.
Yeah,
like,
serve one term.
It's interesting because, and I would
Very
like
much.
to see the end of this case. Really.
Very much, very much. It's the first time that we've had a former president sit for 4 years and also continue for 6 months of his predecessor. So it's just interesting times. I mean, the Supreme Court has the final authority to interpret the 1992 Constitution. I mean, no doubt in my mind that should this case travel any further, it would be a case in reference for posterity to be able to learn from. So maybe on an academic background, why not? Let's take an academic journey and see how this plays out.
Right. It will be interesting. Let me go to Abraham Amalba. Before you go, I'll take your final submission on this. Let me find out if the president, I don't know, you are not in his office, but can you tell me if they've probably made an attempt, but he's not made himself available, anything of that nature?
I cannot answer that question because the bailiffs don't work in the former president's of the bailiffs who can answer this question, that they made an attempt but could not get through. But let me say that the Constitution is written in plain language, English. The Constitution is reader-friendly. And so that is why any ordinary person can read the Constitution and understand it. It's only on few occasions that there could be some interpretation issue, but largely the entire Constitution is very clear and is reader-friendly. Because the Constitution is not made for lawyers alone. It is made for the entire citizenry. And because of that, the drafters of the Constitution will always use simple and plain language. My colleague indicated that there must be an interpretative issue for you to go to court, and for that matter, to the Supreme Court. You cannot create confusion in your own mind, then proceed to the Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to interpret a plain language which is not ambiguous. So where in the Constitution does it say that if you were once a president and you served 1 term, and you want to come back and serve another term, you are disallowed. And that is why my colleague indicated that clearly that will amount to restricting the will of the people. The people must decide who they want. And so you cannot have a situation where now the Constitution will be restricting the number of options available. In any case, this Constitution was drafted, taking on board best practices all over the world. Donald Trump is currently the leading figure in the Republican Party to lead them again. But for his criminal issues, the actions taken against him, but for those things, would anybody in the US stop from Donald Trump from contesting the primaries of the Republican Party? So this Constitution is drawn from best practice all over the world, particularly the US and the UK. The framers of the Constitution did not limit the second term to only sitting presidents. And those who drafted the Constitution, if they intended to say that, when they got to Article 61 to 1 and 2, they would have said so. They were not sleeping. They were not hungry when they got to Article 61 2. They did not get to Article 61 2, and suddenly they went blank. So going to court to ask for an interpretation of something which is clear is mind-boggling. And let me say this: the Supreme Court itself is under the Constitution. The Supreme Court does not write the Constitution. The Supreme Court interprets the Constitution. So the Supreme Court cannot be seen writing the Constitution for Ken KURACHIE when there is no ambiguity. So I think that much as he has the right to go to court,
in your head, there's no ambiguity. It's fair and safe to say in the head of another, there's ambiguity, which is why the Supreme Court is there to interpret it. And sometimes we say,
Court is not there
we even say sometimes in our normal political parlance that any fool can go to court. That means that the court is open for anybody and everybody if you have some ambiguity in your head and you want to seek interpretation.
We are now getting to absurd levels. We are now getting to absurd levels where you sleep and when your pillow confronts you with some ambiguity in your head. This should have been a situation where the plaintiff, he being a lawyer and has just been called to the bar and lacks experience, should have consulted senior lawyers for clarity of thought. This, and I just want to ask a question. Where in the Constitution does it say that it is only sitting presidents who can go for second term? How do you link that article to only sitting presidents? Is there any preamble that says that it is only sitting presidents who can go for second term? Is there anything like that? So why do you create confusion in your own mind and then go to the Supreme Court and ask of the opinion of the Supreme Court is not a chamber for seeking opinions.
Abraham Maliba, let's leave it here. I'm grateful for your time now, and we'll speak to you again. Let's see how this travels, how far this travels, if he's able to do to serve as he's expected to. You're also watching Good Afternoon Ghana. Let's take a breather. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. I earlier on was with Abraham Amaleba, and Theophilus Donko is also here, also legal practitioner. Abraham Amaleba is the Director of Legal Affairs for the NDC. Pagwe Boachidankwa is also with me. The other side of what we don't know, or what we have just received, is that Ken KURACHIE, who is a plaintiff of this suit against former President Mahama, former President Kufuor, and is it the Attorney General?
Attorney General.
Yeah, the Attorney General. Well, okay, I know that Mahama has not received his. We don't know if President Kufuor, former President Kufuor, and Attorney General have received theirs. But that's the updates from Good Afternoon, Ghana, after 24 hours of the suit being filed. Where do we go from here going forward?
Going forward, after service...
But wait, let me ask the wisdom behind former President Kufuor and Attorney General also in the suit.
When it comes to the issue of interpretation and enforcement, the Attorney General is usually a party.
Okay.
For instance,
so he made them party because of the...
Because of that, his role as the leader of the bar and the government, because when there's an issue against any institution of state enforcement interpretation, he will have to. So you realize that all the cases, the Attorney General, which involves interpretation and enforcement, the Attorney General is made a party, either as a principal party or as a nominal party. And then I want to react to the issue. I realized that the writ was filed on Monday at 12, so I'm sure it will get to the bailiff yesterday. So I think the bailiff will have, because it was filed yesterday at 12, it has to go through a process assigned to a particular bailiff. So between yesterday and today, I think it
And the suits leaked and traveled this far?
That is one culture. I don't know, when we file processes, we leak it to the media before the persons who are supposed to have notice of it are served. I
remember I once posted a suit on social media, and my boss called me. He's like, "Why did you post it?" And I said, "Well, we received it." He said, "You can't post everything you receive." Then he said, "How do you know if the person who's been sued has received, or it's been served?" And I said, "Well, I don't want him to see that he's been sued first on my wall." So I actually pulled down the post because of that question he asked. But he didn't say pull it down. He just said, "So what if he sees it on your wall that, he's been sued?" I'm like, "No, not my wall." So I pulled it down. I don't know how it,
That's a new culture that has cropped
because of social media.
Social media, and then at times I think people want other people to hear what they are doing. So previously, it will be difficult for you to, and there are instances judicial officers have been dismissed because of leaking
of information.
If you look at, there was a divorce matter which is supposed to be private, but it was leaked and it was all over the place. So I think that we should all be advised that the issue is not on social media or traditional media, it is in the courtroom. So you take steps to serve the parties that are involved. For instance, former President Mahama's office is a place we can all easily locate. So it is good that he's served. So I think that the social media thing, we should tone down a little bit when it comes to, because it's a serious national issue.
Yeah.
For instance, the orders of the Supreme Court, if you don't obey it as a president, it is a ground for your removal.
Right.
As a
statesman.
Even a president, that's one of the grounds. If they give an interpretation and give direction and you don't obey. So the Supreme Court is a serious business which we should take seriously as a nation. So I believe that Ken should take steps, because time is of essence, so that it doesn't happen like the way the Domilevo issue came and everybody was chastising the Supreme Court. I think it is not their fault, because if I was the one issuing this rate, I would have added my statement of case, so that the people who are supposed to respond, they respond as well. Then the matters will be set down, a memorandum of issues, or what we call issues are set down. Then the Supreme Court can hear you. So at times it depends on the parties. That is why these cases delay. But as I think that in a way, I want to agree with my learned senior Mariba, but he is a politician, so he is looking at it that way. Because there must be real issue of interpretation. Right. Real issue. That's what the Supreme Court has said. Yeah. And there are guidelines as to how when the issues, you look at it, and where the constitution there is a lacuna or you don't understand something. But this one, clearly, if you read clause 1 and 2, it says that you are entitled to 4 years as a president, and you are entitled to 2 terms. Nowhere did it say that for your second term,
you must be in office.
You must be in an office. I think that it will be, I don't want to use certain words, but
being overly critical.
No, I think it's leading to absurdity.
Okay, as Amaliba said.
I think that it should be issue of real interpretation and not any other issue. You think that in his mind, the person, because previously all the persons who have run second term were sitting presidents, so definitely it should happen like that. But it is the spirit and the letter of the constitution. We should also know that the Supreme Court has said.
I don't know why everybody is just
the Supreme Court
making so light of this issue. Someone says that, Annie, why are we giving Ken who? It's like die-hard supporter of the NPP, this hype. Okay, we're not giving him hype. Do you know he's contesting for NPP primaries in Okankwe and he's getting the hype just for shaggy reasons to beat his contenders? Okay, the NDC is a party focus. Jachi Kwesing now. Yeah, we are focused on Jachi Kwesing and Mr. Apia in Nase North. All right. Thank you, but I don't know if he's declared his intention to run for any constituency, but thank you for the tip. We'll follow up. Paragraph. I say not. Or you want to?
Yes. Well, no. I think that we've done justice to the subject matter. I say not very clearly. Our party is on grounds. The chairman is there to support our candidate to make sure that Charles takes the order of the day. The New Patriotic Party has had 16 by-elections that we have won out of the 31 that has been held. I mean, no doubt in my mind that the successes that we chalked in Kumewu will retain same spiritedness to ensure that the MPP wins the Asin North by-election.
Anytime you say that, they say don't forget that Asin North is a new constituency. It's not really a traditional constituency.
It's not a problem. New constituency, old constituency, traditional constituency, the Ghanaian people know that the party of choice for them, especially the people in Asin North, are aware that the party of choice is the New Patriotic Party.
Right. So, best leaders and mentors don't expect relationship. Good leaders inspire conscious trust rather than blind trust. The issue with many leaders and influencers is that they don't want you to think independently, with the fear that if you do, you will lose their influence or you lose as other benefits they enjoy due to the influence. Any leader of any kind, political, religion, business, hey, your message is long. If I'm spending all the time to read this, I can't finish my show. This one says that, good afternoon to you, my sister. I believe Ghanaians are interested in confusion. Where was Ken when former president contested? Look, Annie, there will be a time even a certain president will be removed by his or her party for another aspirant. This is from Philip Kumasi. Thank you for that as well. So, well, I mean, it's law and it's interpretation. So I like it when people try the law. There's nothing wrong with it. So let's see how this will go, because it's a new thing for us also trying an outgone president coming back. I mean, it will be interesting just to know the education of it. So maybe the new lawyer is trying his, So that has been it. This is Good Afternoon, Ghana. And I've been in a studio with Paragraph Boachidankwa, who is the government spokesperson for governance and security as well. Also, Theophilus Donko is a private legal practitioner. I'm grateful, Theophilus, for the education you have given us. Also, the opinions of lawyer Abraham Amaliba, who is the director of legal affairs for the NDC, has also spoken. He thinks that this suit has no legs to stand on, and former president has not been served. My name is Ania Fwampo. Thanks for watching. Good afternoon.